The corridor of the university hospital always seemed longer on Wednesday nights. Dr. Helena Schneider knew this better than anyone. 16 years of night shifts on that same floor, 16 years observing the same white walls, the same light-coloured floor that reflected the fluorescent lights. Her impeccably white lab coat swayed as she walked with determined steps, the stethoscope hanging around her neck like second nature. Helena had the demeanour of someone who knew the exact weight of her own decisions. A calm yet attentive expression, dark brown eyes that rarely revealed emotions but never missed details. It was this combination, the firmness in diagnosis and the surgical calmness, that made her a reference in the internal medicine department. "Doctor, we have a cardiac arrest in the emergency room." The head nurse didn't even need to finish the sentence. Helena was already redirecting her steps, rushing to the other end of the floor. It was when she saw him for the first time, awkward, with brown hair falling over his eyes, trying to balance a stack of files while running in the opposite direction. The inevitable happened in a matter of seconds. The collision, the papers flying, the embarrassment plastered on the young man's face. "Forgive me, I'm late. Emergency," he stammered as he bent down to collect the documents. "The emergency is that way." Helena pointed with calculated calm, in the tone she used for anxious patients. "I'm Dr. Helena Schneider, and you would be—" "Ethan Campbell, first-year resident. It's my first shift here." He smiled, a smile so genuine it was almost disorienting. "Sorry for the mess. Dr. Campbell, if you want to survive in the hospital, rule number 1 is, never run, unless someone is literally dying." Helena kept her tone neutral, but her eyes appraised every inch of the young doctor. "And rule number 2, know the right way to the emergency room. It's that way." The cardiac arrest in the emergency room was controlled within minutes. Helena worked with mechanical precision, giving clear orders, precise movements. Ethan watched intently, trying to absorb every second of the impeccable methodology. When the patient's heart rhythm stabilized, she noticed the focused look of the young resident. "Does something intrigue you, Dr. Campbell? The way you spoke to the patient while he was regaining consciousness, it was different." Ethan seemed genuinely impressed. "You looked him in the eye. Most people look at the monitors." Helena felt a sudden discomfort. It was too personal an observation, too intimate for a first meeting. It reminded her of how Miguel, her ex-husband, never really noticed those small details about her. After 15 years of marriage, when he decided to start life over with a co-worker 20 years younger, Helena simply signed the papers. She never responded to his justifications. She just moved on. "Monitors don't feel fear, Dr. Campbell. Patients do," she replied curtly before turning her back. The following weeks brought a constant that Helena had not anticipated. Ethan seemed to be everywhere. His enthusiasm was almost exhausting to watch. He asked too many questions, smiled too much, talked to patients for too long. On a particularly hectic morning, while she was explaining an elderly patient's heart condition, Ethan interrupted the conversation to suggest an alternative protocol. Helena felt the blood boiling in her veins. "Dr. Campbell, could you accompany me to the hallway?" Her cold tone contrasted with the heat of the irritation she felt. In the empty hallway, Helena faced him with severity. "Never interrupt my conversation with a patient again. If you disagree with a procedure, discuss it later, in private." "I wasn't disagreeing, Dr. Helena." He seemed genuinely confused. "I just thought that's the problem. You think too much and observe too little." She took a deep breath. "Medicine isn't just in books or protocols, it's in people. In that room, I wasn't just explaining a medical procedure. I was calming a frightened man who had never undergone surgery before." For the first time, Ethan's easy smile faded. He nodded, thoughtful. "I understand. I'm sorry. Truly." Helena expected defiance, justifications, the typical responses from residents when corrected. Instead, she saw humility, and a genuine desire to learn, something she didn't anticipate. "Tomorrow I'll join the morning rounds. Don't be late." Autumn was progressing, and with it, an unexpected routine was taking shape. Helena allowed Ethan to accompany her in more complex procedures. He, in turn, absorbed each lesson with an attention that bordered on reverence. One late afternoon, after a successful procedure, Ethan left a coffee on her table in the doctor's office. Helena observed the gesture with curiosity. "How did you know I prefer my coffee black?" "I observed," he replied simply, a slight smile on his lips. "I do that a lot, you know. Watching people. It's almost a hobby of mine." Helena felt an inexplicable warmth in her chest. "And what else have you observed about me, Dr. Campbell?" "That you always touch the patient's pulse before starting any explanation. It's not to check the beats. You've already looked at the monitors. It's to create contact." He spoke naturally. "And that you never use your ex-husband's name. You always refer to him as my ex in conversations with the head nurse." The coffee almost slipped from her hands. "That is disturbingly accurate." Ethan shrugged. "I come from a family of people who didn't say much with words. I learned to understand through gestures." That night in her quiet apartment, Helena found herself thinking about that conversation. How strange it was to truly be seen by someone after so long. Her ex-husband Miguel rarely noticed her preferences, even after years together. The coffee Ethan had brought was exactly how she liked it. Strong, no sugar. That's how spring found them, between shift swaps, forgotten coffees on the nursing station counter, and conversations that gradually crossed professional boundaries. Helena, little by little, allowed herself to smile more. Ethan, in turn, visibly grew as a doctor, absorbing her methodical serenity. One night, after a particularly difficult shift where they lost a young patient, Helena found Ethan in the hospital chapel. He wasn't praying, just sitting, staring into emptiness. "The first loss is always the hardest," she said, sitting beside him. "It's not my first," he replied, his voice choked. "But each one feels unique. This patient... He was my father's age when..." Ethan abruptly stopped, as if he had said too much. Helena noticed but didn't press. Instead, she did something that surprised both of them. She held his hand. "Medicine teaches us that we are only supporting characters in each person's healing story. Some stories don't end the way we would like." He gently squeezed her hand. "How do you deal with it for so many years without becoming completely hardened?" "Who said I haven't toughened up?" Helena smiled sadly. "You didn't know me before. I wish I had known you." The sincerity in his voice unsettled her. It was at that moment that Helena felt something she had forgotten. That free-fall sensation in her stomach, as if she were on the edge of a cliff. She gently withdrew her hand and stood up. "You should go home and rest, Dr. Campbell." "Ethan," he gently corrected. "Outside the hospital, I'm just Ethan." Spring turned into summer and something indescribable grew between them. They were no longer just mentor and apprentice, they were confidants, friends. Helena shared stories of her formative years. Ethan spoke about his dreams for the future of medicine. What had started as irritation had transformed into mutual admiration. She admired the way he never lost his enthusiasm, even on the darkest days. He admired how she could be strong without losing her humanity. On a coincidental afternoon off, they unintentionally met at a cafe near the hospital. Helena was rereading The Little Prince, an annual tradition she had maintained since college. "My father loved this book," Ethan remarked, sitting down at her table unceremoniously. "He used to say it was the only book that managed to explain how adults complicate the obvious." Helena smiled. "Your father seems to have been a wise man." "He was." Ethan gazed at the cup of coffee. "He died when I was 15. Pancreatic cancer. It was watching the doctors care for him that made me decide to pursue medicine." Helena's heart tightened. There was something in the way he spoke about his father, a mix of love and unresolved pain. "Tell me about him," she requested, and Ethan told her. He spoke about his father, a professor who taught history at a local university, who collected ancient maps and believed the best conversations happened during walks. He talked about how his father faced illness with dignity, refusing to be just the patient in room 304. In the end, there was a doctor. She was different from the others. She spoke to him as a person, not as a lost cause. Even when everyone knew it was a matter of time, she never lost that look of someone who believes in healing. Helena felt a shiver run down her spine. How many terminal patients had she cared for over the years? "I think she inspired me too," Ethan continued, oblivious to her disturbance. The way she looked into his eyes, how she spoke calmly, even in the worst moments. "Do you remember her name?" Helena asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Ethan frowned. "She was young at the time, a resident, I think. My father used to say she had calm eyes." Helena's world seemed to freeze. A resident, attending pancreatic cancer cases around 11 years ago. It could be a coincidence, but something inside her told her it wasn't. "Ethan," she hesitated. "What was your father's name?" "Stephen Campbell," he responded, surprised by the sudden question. Helena felt her heart race. Stephen Campbell, the professor. Room 304, the man with the ancient maps who never complained, even when the pain was visible in his eyes. "Ethan, I think I knew your father." Summer had turned into autumn again, and the relationship between Helena and Ethan entered uncharted territory. After the revelation at the coffee shop, both were confused about the meaning of that connection. Helena instinctively withdrew, frightened by the idea that the universe had created such an unlikely bond. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed more determined than ever to get closer, as if that discovery was a sign, something greater than themselves. On a rainy night, when the hospital was unusually calm, Ethan found her in the doctor's lounge. "I need to show you something," he said, holding a yellowed, visibly old envelope. "I found it among my father's things. I had never opened it before. I don't know why." Helena looked at the envelope with apprehension. "What is this?" "A letter he wrote in his final days, addressed to me to be opened when I had found my way. He talks about life, about the future he dreamed for me," Ethan said with a choked voice. "But there's a passage here." He handed the letter to Helena, pointing to a specific paragraph. "If one day you meet that calm-eyed doctor, Dr. Schneider, tell her that even when life was fading, she spoke like someone who believed in healing. That made everything less painful. Some people heal even when death is certain. They heal the way we depart. She gave me the gift of leaving whole, not broken. I hope you find someone like that in your life, son. Someone who sees beyond the surface, who heals even when it seems impossible." Helena couldn't hold back the tears. She vividly remembered the last days of Stephen Campbell, how he always asked about her studies, even when the morphine made him drowsy. How he insisted on sitting in the chair by the window saying, "Sick people stay in bed, people live sitting and watching the world." "I was just a resident," she said softly. "I knew almost nothing compared to what I know today. But your father, he taught me more about dignity than any medical book." Ethan approached, holding her hand.